Welcome back, everybody. I have got a cool Stamina Nightblade build for you guys today. It is basically a Stamblade built around the Vampire Drain. I put it together to be a quite durable medium armor build, having a ton of sustain and a ton of health recovery, and then we use that really strong Vampire Drain to sap our health recovery away and turn it into a ton of damage on demand. I found this build to be quite a lot of fun to play, and I really wanted to share it with you guys because I've been trying a few different things on my Stamblade, and this one felt really rewarding when I got the gameplay down. That drain can add a ton of additional damage to this build, and then of course we can just turn it on and off so we can retain a lot of durability and a lot of sustain. It's kind of a cool option to have. That being said, the drain is a little bit of a double-edged sword. If you don't turn it off in time, or if you forget that your drain is on, it can be very, very devastating. All right, so let's take a look at that build. So to start off, I am a Khajiit on this guy, and I think Khajiit is the race to go for a few different reasons. Namely, we get the health recovery, the magicka, and the stamina recovery, all three of which we kind of need on this build. Of course, we get that critical damage and critical healing that Khajiit offers too. You could also go with something like Wood Elf on this. Even Orc, Nord, or even Imperial are also good choices, as this build is kind of a mix between a damage and a bulkier build. Now, taking a look at our stats, we got 13k magicka, 30k hit points, and 26k stamina. So let's take a look at the sustain on this build. We've got 1300 magicka recovery, 3900 health recovery, and 2900 stamina recovery. We are rocking a ton of recovery on this build. Keep in mind, I am on the PTS, so the recovery stats are a little bit higher in the new patch than they will be on the live server. Nonetheless, we've got a lot of sustain and namely a lot of health recovery. This is very important, not only defensively, but to help also offset the health cost of the drain that we use to increase our damage. Alright, so our weapon damage when we buff up is 3,855, plus about 800 more weapon damage from our Nightblade flank passive and our Master Bow. So we're sitting at around 4.6k weapon damage without our Vampire Drain on. And then when we turn our drain on, you can see the weapon damage quickly hits the 5k mark before our invisible buffs, and we can easily push over 6,000 weapon damage with the drain on this build before we find ourselves getting into pretty dangerous waters. Now, our physical spell resist are also fairly important stats for this build, and that's because we are using the Elysian set. So when we fully buff up, we have got 30k physical and spell resist on this bad boy with 2,557 crit resist. For medium armor, this is a pretty nice armor value. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty good. Now, taking a look at our Mundus, I have got the Steed Mundus here. If you're playing this build on the live server, I would recommend taking the Serpent Mundus here, and that's just going to give you the supplementary stamina recovery that the build doesn't have until the changes to the major recovery buffs come in the new patch. Otherwise, if this patch is already live, you can just stick with the Steed here. It's going to offer us a little bit of movement speed bonus, which is always great for PvP. And of course, we get that health recovery. You don't have to go with the Steed. You honestly could switch it out to something else if you want. I just like this stack defensively. A little bit more health recovery, a little bit more movement speed. Always nice. Now, we are a vampire, and we're stage 1 vampire on this build. You could go for a stage 2 vampire to take advantage of the weapon damage passive that we get coming out of stealth. That being said, we actually give up a lot of health recovery in order to get that passive, and to be honest, it's actually not really worth it to give up that much health recovery in order to get that little bit of extra weapon damage, just because of how we've put the build together. So for this build in particular, I think Vampire Stage 1 is probably the best bet. We need to be Stage 1 to have access to the Vampire skills and use the Drain. The Drain is going to give us a lot more damage than the Stealth passive will. Now for the food, we have got the Artaeum Takeaway Broth. Really great all-around food, max health, max stam, and of course stamina and health recovery. All stats that we need for this build. We want some bulk and we want some sustain and damage. And then of course for the potion, we've got the Tri-Restoration Potion. This is going to give us all of our major recovery buffs in the new patch. They're going to be a 40% increase to our recoveries. So yeah, very important I think that we have these in the new patch and this patch as well, giving us just great sustain. Now taking a look at the gear that we've got on this bad boy. The first set that we have, of course, is the Elysian set. Now this set turns 2% of our sum total resistance into health recovery. So when we fully buff up our resistances on this build, the Alessian set is going to give us 1,196 base health recovery, and that is a massive amount of stat to get on a 5-piece for any set. And this set, my friends, allows us to use the drain a lot more effectively on this build without putting ourselves in a really dangerous spot when we turn it on. Of course, the defensive capabilities of health recovery in PvP are also amazing because it is a healing source that is not halved by Battle Spirit. Now, taking a look at the next set we've got, I have got stuns on the front bar. Stuns is pretty much the best damage set you can run on a Stamina Nightblade. Of course, access to that off balance easily with our surprise attack, allowing us to get a huge amount of physical penetration increase. The 2-3-4 piece on stuns is also really amazing for a damage build. So yeah, great synergy just to give us that damage on our front bar. Now, we didn't go for a set that gives us a ton of weapon or spell damage here, simply because we're relying on the health recovery mostly for a majority of our healing. Now, taking a look at the next set we've got the Master Bow on the back bar. Master Bow, of course, going to give us a little bit more weapon damage when we hit an opponent with that poison injection. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then for the next set, we've got a single trainee bracers. Now, the one-piece trainee actually gives us 1454 max health. A lot of maximum health to get on a one-piece bonus, so we're going to take that, thank you very much, giving us that 30k health value. And then finally, this single one-piece Krogs for the penetration to increase our outgoing damage. I picked Krogs here again because penetration is going to be better for damage in a PvP situation than weapon damage would in this spot, and our health recovery being our primary healing source. Now, when we take a look at the traits on this build, starting off on the Master Bow, we've got Infused with the Weapon Spell Damage enchant. Definitely the best way to go. The Master Bow is already set up to help buff the rest of our combo when we hit our poison injection. The Infused Weapon Spell Damage enchant will just push that even further. Now, moving on to our Maul, we have got Nirnhoned with the Poison Damage enchant. You can go for Nirnhoned or Sharpened here. It's actually up to you. Sharpened will be a little bit more damage, but Nirnhoned's going to be all around better for damage and healing. And then, of course, the Poison Damage enchant, because when the poison status is afflicted on your target, the dot ticks instantly. So the Poison Damage enchant can actually deal a little bit more damage than its disease counterpart. You could go for the disease enchant or a poison of your choice here if you want to as well. Now, taking a look at the jewelry, I have got full infused Alessian jewelry. No torque, no mythic rings on this build, so the sets on this build actually fairly easy to come by, save maybe the Master Bow, which is not too tough to get, but still you have to go do a special dungeon for it. Now, we've got a mix of different enchants on this infused jewelry. The weapon damage enchant to start, the tri-stat recovery glyph here next, and then finally a stamina recovery enchant. And this is just to help get us to the sustain point that we want to be on this build, just basically balancing out our build. Now, moving on to the gear here. All of the gear is enchanted with the tri-stat Hacky Joe glyph. We want all the max stat that we can get on this spec. And then finally, for the traits, I've gone for reinforced on the heavy armor pieces. Again, playing into that Alessian set, getting a little bit more armor value here, as well as health recovery. And then for the rest of the gear, I've actually gone with Invigorating. Now, you could go for Well-Fitted or Invigorating, a mix of the two here. I wouldn't recommend any other traits, though, just because the sustain we get here is really what we want. I particularly like Invig because we're really utilizing the health recovery on this build, so we can actually get a lot out of it, but again, it's up to the user here. Now, let's take a look at the skills we've got on this build. First up, Surprise Attack. This is going to be our primary spammable. It will also reduce the opponent's armor, set them off balance, and of course stun them if we hit them from the flank. Really great all-around move for the Nightblade, probably the best spammable in the game. And for a build like this, when we crank up our damage, this will hit very hard. Now, the next skill we've got is Ambush. This is our primary gap closer for the build. It's also going to give us Empower, increasing the damage of our upcoming light and heavy attacks. Very important, again, to increase our combo damage. And, of course, the minor vulnerability on our target to increase the damage that they take by 5%. Now, the next ability that we have is Camouflaged Hunter. This is here mostly for that passive slot. We get the Major Savagery here. When we hit an opponent's flank, we also get the Minor Berserk. And of course, we get a little bit of passive weapon damage for slotting this skill. We can also use Camouflaged Hunter to stealth detect a stealth opponent if they're close to us. So there you go. And then finally, for the Great Sword heal, we of course have Rally. This patch, Minor Endurance, is a 20% stamina recovery buff, and we get the Major Brutality 20% weapon damage too. So a lot of buff coming out of this skill here. And then this is also our only heal on the build. We've got a lot of health recovery, and we're fairly durable with just that alone. But when we need that burst heal, we also have the Rally to give us a little bit more. And for our next normal ability, we have Relentless Focus. This is our hardest hitting single target ability that we have on this build. Yep, it also will increase our critical damage and healing by 2% for each stack that we get, so a total of 10% critical damage and healing. You have to do 5 light attacks in order to get the bow to fire, but when you do, you can absolutely devastate people, and if you're in melee range, you can heal for a percentage of the damage done as well. Now, the next ability we have is our ultimate, Incapacitating Strike. This is Nightblade's best ultimate, I think. It stuns the opponent. It is a very strong single target ult, increases the damage your opponent takes by 20% after you use it, so you can follow it up with a very powerful Relentless Focus. And then, of course, while slotted, we gain Reave too. But the big thing here, I think, is that the Nightblade ult can stun when we get to 120 ult, and then it's also very cheap. So if we don't need the stun, but just the damage, we have easy access to this ultimate as well. And finally, slotting a bunch of assassination skills on our front bar is going to help increase our critical chance, also important for a stamina Nightblade. Now, taking a look at the back bar, the first skill we have is Poison Injection. This, of course, is going to proc our Master Bow and apply a little bit of a deadly damage over time that increases in damage as our opponent's health begins to fall. You can go for the other morph of this ability if you want in order to interrupt a target at a distance. Honestly, for solo PvP, it's a very good skill to have, so it's kind of up to the user there. Now, the next skill we have is Mirage. You have a few options of what you want to use here, but I chose Mirage for, well, the reason that the minor buffs got buffed a lot in the new patch, giving us almost 3k physical and spell resist, more health recovery thanks to our Lessian set, and of course, we're going to get major evasion when we use this, reducing the damage we take from AoEs by 20%. That is pretty much our biggest weakness on a build like this, so yeah, this will go a long way defensively. You could go for Shuffle here if you want to have a stamina dump instead and some snare immunity. You won't get the armor, however, so you give up a little bit of health recovery, and you could even go for Race Against Time if you want to have a little bit more damage on this build. Now, the next skill we have is Simmering Frenzy, and this is the skill that this entire build is basically built around. I wanted Simmering Frenzy to be able to work to give us that damage potential of a very high damage Nightblade on a much bulkier Nightblade spec than you could normally have that damage on. So yeah, it ended up working pretty well. I think the combination of Simmering Frenzy with our health recovery allows us to keep this drain on for a decent amount of time, and the longer we keep this on, the more and more it will buff our outgoing damage. Now, a fun fact about this drain, it doesn't actually follow the global cooldown, so you can cast the drain into another skill instantly, like the drain into the cloak here, and then the drain back into the cloak to turn it off, which just makes using the drain in combat a lot easier, and turning it off and on a lot easier too, because you don't have to take a global cooldown in order to stop your health from sapping away. But I will say this about Simmering Frenzy, it is a very dangerous skill to use. It has a lot of reward, but a ton of risk associated if you don't use it properly. Now, the next ability we have is Shadow Image. This is one of our best defensive abilities on the Nightblade. We throw the shade down, and we can teleport back to it over the next 20 seconds. Now, the shade will also apply Minor Maim to a target, reducing the damage they deal by 5%, so a little bit of a nice damage reduction from it as well. And then we get Shadowy Disguise. This is, of course, access to stealth for the Nightblade. We get a guaranteed critical strike after we use this for the next 3 seconds as well, working well with our choice of being a Khajiit for our race too. And then finally, guys, for the ultimate, I went with Temporal Guard. We get minor protection on the back bar for having this slotted, and then, of course, a very powerful teleport back to where we were 4 seconds ago. This is pretty much, if we have nothing else left to save us, Temporal Guard is the trick. The combination of Temporal Guard with Shade gives us a ton of teleport capabilities on this build too, so we can troll a large group fairly well as well. Alright, so let's take a look at the champion points on this build. Starting off in the tower tree, we've got 44 in Warlord, and that's it. We gotta break free in PvP. Moving on to the Lover, 43 Mooncalf, 64 in Healthy, and 23 Arcanist. Just kind of reflecting our regen stats here. with our points. And then finally, we've got 56 in Tumbling and 40 in Shadow Ward. Bigger focus on Tumbling because we have quite a bit of Invigorating on, so the lack of well-fitted, I think going for a little bit more Tumbling is going to help. And then, of course, Shadow Ward blocking, super important in PvP, regardless of what build we're playing. Now, moving on to the blue tree, nothing in the Apprentice. In the Atronach, we've got 81 Master at Arms with 39 Physical Weapon Expert. Getting access, of course, to that Tactician passive. Very basic Atronach tree, I think, for a stamina damage build. The Tactician passive will set an opponent off balance when we roll, so even more access to off balance for our build. And then finally, we have got the Ritual, 49 Mighty, 50 Piercing, and 51 Precise Strikes. We only have a 50% crit rate, so I think this is the best way to build this tree. And then, of course, we get the Exploiter passive, the Perfect Strike passive, and the Last Stand passive. All of them are going to help out for our stamina build. Exploiter, namely, I think, for that bonus damage against the off-balance opponent. Now, moving on to the Steed, we have got a stacked tree here. 50 Ironclad, 50 Spell Shield, 50 Resistant, and 50 in Medium Armor Focus. Now, you could actually put a little bit more in Medium Armor Focus and Spell Resist if you want, just to crank up your health recovery a little further on this build. But putting many points past 60 or so is probably not going to be super worth it. Now, moving on to our next tree, we have got 59 points, 23 Hardy, 23 Elemental, and 13 in Thick Skin. Just put what points I could in here just to make up for kind of having stacked the other tree so heavily. And then 11 in Quick Recovery, just for that first few points to get a little bit more healing power. And that is the build, guys. All right, guys, let's jump into that PvP commentary. So for the first fight here, I am outside of this keep, and there's quite a few yellow players that have been chasing me a little bit here. And I drop down below this cliff, and these Nightblades start giving me the business. I saw the second Nightblade go into stealth there. The first one has me marked, and we're just going to sit here and hold block. The first enemy Nightblade opens up with his snipes, and we right away jump on top of him. A partial charged heavy attack after dodging the snipe into the ambush, and we stun him with that combo, almost getting him with the surprise attack, but the other Nightblade hits us with a gank, counter-stunning us as we try to finish off the first guy there. So I right away just keep the stealth up here, and we keep the pressure on this other Nightblade. I throw the ultimate down, and we manage to catch him with a nice stun there. And this enemy Nightblade here hitting us with the mark, and there's the full dot blade spam. We take a lot of damage from the dots there, but you see the cloak doing a good job suppressing the damage over time as we wait out the 3 seconds on that mark, and we get right back into stealth, and we just quickly heal up, and we manage to actually find this Nightblade, trying to sneak back into the keep here, and we hit him with the stealth detect, catch him with the ultimate, and I believe he was out of stamina because he just laid on the ground for us there. And now we're just going to buff up and hit this next guy. I go for the drain going into this combo there. You see, as I use the cloak, I turn the drain off, bow heavy attack into my combo, and then we turn the drain off with our cloak coming out of it. And the reason we went for the drain on that target is because she definitely looked a little bulkier, even though she was lower HP, and I wanted to make sure we could seal the kill. This guy here takes a little bit of damage from the blue player. I go for the ultimate here into the surprise attack with the drain on again, or sorry, the simmering frenzy, and we get a good combo on that yellow player. A little bit of a look around in this keep, trying to find some more yellow players. I leave the blue guys alone. There's not very many of them. And yellow is back out here trying to pick up their dead bodies. We try to stop the first res there. The player rolls away. I put some poison injections down. We go for the combo on the player. I poison injection there, but I right away turn around, hit the resing player with the surprise attack to stun him. And we're going to shade back behind the pillar. And just trying to make sure that I keep that shade on the ground right behind the pillar. An easy teleport here into a fairly safe kind of location if we find ourselves getting hit by anything too bad. There's the ultimate connecting on the player's Twilight, exactly what I wanted to do. And just come back behind the pillar here, reset our buffs with our rally again. And I decide to peel away. The yellow players are starting to converge on that spot, and I want to just open from a different angle where I'm not kind of pressed down in a single location. So I go for the tree here, just kite these yellow out a little bit, set a fresh shade down, and it looks like some red players are coming in to face the yellow off here. So I just throw the poison injection down. We go for the drain into the stealth there, the light attack, the ambush, and there's the ultimate. Huge damage on that guy, and we flick the drain off into our cloak on the weapon swap there. Really important important that you get the timing on that drain down because you don't want to leave it on and miss it. It's a lot of additional damage to take, especially when you leave it on a long period of time. And here we're just doing the kite game, throwing the new shades down, getting back into stealth. The Nightblade did just mark us, but it looks like he can't see us in stealth with that mark. And we're just going to quickly kind of get behind the rocks here and just go for a little bit of a reset. The yellow players are starting to push out on top of me. The rest of the red players, I believe, have died here or retreated. So we're left to fight. We throw some good damage into this guy here, get a nice cloak, jump on top of him with the surprise, the ambush there, and I just missed the surprise attack. But we've got a trusty poison injection to finish him off there, telling me I should run the other morph, everybody. There you go. That's why we run poison injection. We managed to get the kill, and there's a gank from the Nightblade from behind there. I just set the shade down, and I kite back behind towards the rocks here, just in case we need to drop down. We have a little bit more cover. And we go for the shade back up here as all the yellow players converge to the bottom. And now we've got a little bit of height on these guys, throwing the poison injections down. A lot of pressure coming from these guys. And I go for the ultimate teleport into the shade, the double teleport to escape. We took a lot of pressure there, so it's definitely the right call. And we're going to reset our buffs here, throw the drain on, and go for the gank on the back of the group. There we go for the heavy attack into the relentless focus, the surprise attack to finish him off. And right away, the group jumps on top of me. And there you see, the one time I forgot to turn my drain off in this footage, it really sapped my health. So very important that we make sure we hit the cancel on that one. And just throwing more poison injections down on these guys, making sure, of course, to keep that shade down. Unfortunately, getting stunned by the Sork ability there. I just take the stun and break it a little bit lower on stamina. Heavy attack down into the shade. A little bit of sustain coming from that, and I just wanted to stall out until our next potion. And there you see as we drop to the bottom, I get the potion. And it looks like some blue players and a red player have charged into here. There's still some dead players there. There's a huge relentless focus on that guy there. And again, the poison injection coming in clutch. Wow, twice in one clip. I don't even know what to say. And a big connection with the ultimate on that guy there. Almost bringing him down with that combo. I shoot the spectral arrow into him right away. The poison injection too. But I don't try to stick out that kill as we took a nasty gank, I think, from one of the blue players. And that fight ends up getting cleaned up when I come back around that corner. Now, moving on to our next fight. I'm inside of an enemy keep, and we're just playing with the yellow players here, trying to pick a fight, throwing a few poison injections down, and seeing who's going to chase us around the corner. An enemy Templar comes here, so we throw the poison injection down right away. I actually get the roll there, setting him off balance, but I don't manage to get the heavy attack in time. The enemy Templar jumps on top, hitting us with that stun there. I'm going to counter with my own stun into the relentless focus, a big smack on that Templar to bring him down. We didn't have the drain up there, so we still have some firepower when the drain is off. Actually, quite a bit of firepower without the drain. But when we turn on that Simmering Frenzy, that's when we can really cause some hurt. And here you see I'm just trying to fence with this very tanky enemy Sork here. He's not taking a lot of damage, so I right away shift targets to the other Sork that has engaged here. And the enemy Dragon Knight jumping on top, throwing the chains down. We got the snipes coming in from a Nightblade, it looks like, as well. So we're just going to do a kite into the cubby there, teleport back away, and we run into the other part of the building, setting down a new shade on the top of the staircase there, and a whole bunch of yellow players engaging with me here. I get a nice stealth there. There's the stun off the partially charged heavy after we dodge that sniper's attack. We finish him off with a nice cancel there, and the yellow players right away trying to go for the res here. And here we go. Now I wish I had the other morph of the poison injection, because we could have prevented the res if we had the interrupt there. And with that, I'm going to let you guys enjoy the rest of the video. If you guys want to send in clips for the top 5 or a build to be featured on the channel, you can send it to KristoferESO@hotmail.com. Check me out on Twitter if you guys want to keep up to date with my shenanigans and my stream times. Speaking of streams, check out my Twitch if you guys want to check out the live stream or just come and say hello. My website, KristoferESO, has written guides to this build and, of course, all my other builds. It's also a hub for all of my ESO content. And finally, we are sponsored by What the Fast. They're a VPN for gamers. They can give you better ping to your favorite games, and they're free to try for the first month. No credit card to sign up, link in the description below. And then last but certainly not least, a huge thank you and a huge shout out to all of my patrons on Patreon. Thanks to you guys, I can keep doing this job that I love so much. Thank you to everybody just for tuning in and watching today. There we go, a nice teleport out of the keep. absolutely intentional again. Have a great night, everyone, and I'll see you next time.